I'm really interested in art that doesn't alienate. I mean, I have this naive sort of hope to be able to, that my work could be understood by all people in a certain sense. And I'm always kind of taken aback when people come and they say, well, you know, I didn't know what I was supposed to think. And, you know, I actually was talking to this fellow and I said, well, you know, you should allow yourself to respond intuitively. I think part of the reason why I started working with the figure was because that audiences felt that if something was abstract, that they were being excluded. It's really about trying to encourage people to just relax and allow themselves to respond, and to not be afraid if they get the wrong response, or if it's not specifically what I had in mind, because really it's their experience. It's not anyone else's experience. It's for them to come and take what they will out of it.
Alison Saar is an African-American sculptor who uses common materials she finds to create figures and themes that express strong human emotions. In her warm and inviting manner, Alison encourages us to enjoy her work at our own pace and on our own level. We'll visit with her at home and at work as she gives us insights into her background and artistic development. The dance you see and the music you hear was created by two other African-American artists as they respond to Saar's work.
I think an important element to all art, but specifically the way that I work in that, is that I view the pieces almost as being halfway completed, and that what the viewer brings to it is the other half of the piece, and that the pieces change drastically, not only from viewer to viewer, but from the same viewer seeing it over a different period of time. It's funny because people, you know, ask what your influences are, and it's interesting in that after a certain point, they consider it, at a certain point it's part of your upbringing and it's part of who you are, and then after that point, then it's part of your kind of formal education in a sense, and I think that people make a divorce in terms of whether it's part of your environment and you're growing up, or whether it's something that you're appropriating from something outside of you. And I don't know, I think that, you know, no matter when you encounter things, that it all just becomes part of who you are.
The truth is, you never leave home. You take it with you everywhere you go. It's under your skin. It moves the tongue and slows the colors. It impedes upon the logic.
In terms of my mixed heritage, you know, to do the roster, it's African American. We suspect Native American tucked away back there somewheres, French, Irish, Scottish, and German. Right. And there's a Spanish surname somewhere in there also. When I was growing up, I think that the real strong family sense came from my mother's side a little bit more, because it was kind of like headed up by my grandmother, and then all the cousins and aunts and uncles. That it's still a very closely knit family, and that those would be where my sisters and I would spend the summer, and we would learn, all the street songs and do all these Motown dances and things such as that. Whereas my aunts and uncles and cousins were very close and very supportive on my father's side, his mother had married a fellow who wasn't accepting of him being married to a black woman. And it wasn't really until I got into college that I was accepted at Scripps College through a black recruitment, and it actually was preceded by a summer session where it was just the black students that were being recruited that year, so that there was an immediate bond there, and I felt an immediate sort of kind of the sigh of relief that I could just be comfortable and I could talk the way I wanted to talk without kind of being looked at strange from one side or the other in a certain sense. And I think that the work reflects that. I think the work is very much about cultures that have been forced to assimilate other cultures. And also I think that a lot of the characters that I do are kind of outsiders in a certain sense, in that they don't belong to one group specifically. An early influence was the Watts Towers, and they're built by a man named Simon Rodia, and I think they were built maybe from the 30s through the 50s, the middle 50s, something like that. And he was an Italian immigrant. He was not taught in terms of engineering or structures or anything, and he built these towers on this little plot of land which was 30 by 15 feet. And I forget how tall they are, maybe like 100 feet, or maybe they just seem to go up forever. But they're these beautiful spires that he built. And he would go to the dumps and get, I think they're like the iron pieces from beds, and bits, and he would tie that together with wire, because he didn't have any sort of welding knowledge or anything like that. So he'd bind them together with wire, and then cover it with concrete, and then in the concrete he would embed bits of mosaic tile and shells and beautiful stones and things such as that. And they're magnificent. I mean, my mother grew up her grandmother lived in Watts, and so she would see him when he was building it when she was growing up. And of course he hadn't died, but he had moved on from the towers by the time we got to go there. But I think 3 is like the earliest photograph documentation I have of myself being there with my older sister, and it told me that art could be made out of anything. I did this piece, which is titled "Hear the Lone Whistle Moan," as part of the Arts and Transit program for the Metro Transit Authority. It's on the 125th Street train station, which is a historic station for the Metro North, and it's actually crosses over 125th Street, which is what we see in the background. I was always intrigued with trains as a symbol in terms of the role it's played in Black American lives and African American lives, and the range of that role, going from, of course, the Underground Railroad with Harriet Tubman, which was, of course, bringing slaves to the North to be freed, and it being symbolic for It replaced the chariot in a certain sense, in that when you died, the train would come and get you and take you to heaven. So I wanted to create a piece that kind of addressed all of those issues and ideas about the trains. And also, I wanted to create a piece that could function on two levels, because I was also real interested in the train as being a symbol for the crossroads and it taking people places, whether that be economically or spiritually or emotionally. This character here, for me, is the equivalent of the African deity Eshu, and he's the spirit of the crossroads. And what I've done is I've kind of created, in this sort of lattice work, a cross up at the top to signify that, and then there's different objects embedded, and so all these objects are symbols of different attributes or different gifts that you would bring to Eshu particularly. What I like about the pieces in terms of them being successful for me is that they're at once quiet and assertive, that they're complicated and that they can be about a lot of things, that people really want to start thinking about what each of those objects mean. And I mean, the idea for me is something extremely specific, and I wouldn't dream that anyone would necessarily catch on to any of that. But I like the idea that all of those things kind of are open to interpretation, that someone could say, well, why is there a horse on this one and a dog on the other one?
To show what we are is to again dance constant in what dance is. The body moving in harmony with the rhythms of the eternal. The body moving in dance. The body passing into the spirit, becoming visible in dance. Becoming what we are. Showing we are the spirit of dance, passing through the bodies into our final conclusion. The hands and voice of Allah.
The work has a real advantage in being in a museum that has a real complete collection of work outside of a real Western context, because that, say, African, a lot of the Asian, and those that have Native American collections, that those pieces really come out of a real strong, complex cultural background, and that I'm not saying that those things can't be appreciated purely for their aesthetic. I was very much taken by the exhibit that the Center for African Art did that really examined the 4 different ways that, say, African art has been seen, and whether that be in the natural history setting, or when they're first being collected, being shown in this very derogatory curiosity sort of setting, and then it being in say, a fine arts history or a fine arts museum, where they're viewed as art objects and they're not really their cultural involvement or their spiritual elements aren't really addressed, and then the greater extreme where it's viewed in a modern art context and it's really just looking at them as an object. I think it's difficult for those pieces to really survive, for them to thrive in that context, and people have tried so many different things where, to frame it with raffia or this or that to kind of make it feel more comfortable or at home. But what it really needs is, it needs those bodies, it needs those people that make those pieces come alive in a certain sense. It's funny because each piece really begins in a different way. Sometimes it's a song I hear and it just